Next slide, please. All right, so I want to introduce the people that are here today. My name again is Lori Friedman. I'm on the steering committee, the leadership team here at Indivisible Marin. We have most of our most of the people here that are going to be working on this call with me are from our phone banking team that have been working in elections for many, many years. Betty Von Glan is here. She was one of our original leaders of our phone banking team, and she's going to be co-presenting today and taking a breakout room. And then we have Sue Ike and Susan McCarthy are here, and they are also longtime phone bankers with us. David Porter is a longtime phone banker also. He's running the Zoom part of the call and handling the technical aspects of the call. So welcome and thanks to all of them for giving up their an hour on their Wednesday afternoons to be here. One quick thing before I get started, and I'm going to remind everybody again, at the end of the presentation, before we get into breakout rooms, you're going to get an invitation. It's going to flash up on your screen to join a breakout room. If you get that, make sure you don't walk away from your screen, because if you do, you'll miss that. So towards the end, we want to make sure that everyone's looking at their screen so they'll see that message from David. The agenda is pretty simple. I'm going to go through some background information. Why are we calling our reps? Does it actually work? What do they do with the information? Then Betty's going to go through the platform briefly, give you an overview of how it works, and then we'll go into our breakout rooms. You'll hear live calls being demonstrated by your trainer so you can hear exactly what those conversations are like and have time for a Q&A. In the past, we've gotten out of here well before the end of the hour, so hopefully this will be a shorter call. So why do we call our reps? This is the question we get the most often, and it's pretty simple. It is the single most effective way to influence them, especially in this time of a resistance. It's the way to hold them accountable to their votes, to their public-facing self, to their communication with us. It's right now, as the minority party, our elected officials don't have any legislative power. They can act to slow things down, but the major thing that they can do to fight back in this resistance is to be very loud. And so that's what we're asking them to do, to be loud in how they vote and how they promote those votes and how they communicate with the public. We want them to be on media. We want them to be communicating with us. We want them to have town halls. This is the way we do it. It creates a record for them. And as they go through their daily work, if they don't hear from us, they think that we think they're doing a good job. So we need to let them know otherwise. If they're not taking votes that we want, if they're not speaking out loud enough, if they're not communicating with us enough, letting them know that creates that sense of urgency that's going to compel them to action. We also want to let them know when they do something that we approve of or that we support. They're working under unprecedented times too. Many of them never signed up for something like this. They are sort of getting their feet under them, just as we are. So when they do the right thing and you've seen them on MSNBC or you've seen them on an independent media, or you saw that TikTok or got that YouTube, let them know, because that's going to, again, move them to continuing to do those things when they know that we're watching. One of the things that we can do that gives it a special power, our messages, is when we also leave a story or an example of how an issue has affected you personally. And this just isn't being angry about a vote or angry about something the Trump administration is doing, but how it's personally affected you or your family. Has somebody lost their job? Has somebody lost their health care? Do you have a veteran in the family that is struggling now with the way the VA is being run? Something personal. Those stories have a special power, they get a special attention. And every time I've called with a story, and it's certainly not all of them, I'm fortunate that I haven't had a lot of effects yet from the administration, but members of my family have. And when I've given that story, someone has stayed on the line with me and asked me questions about it, and I can tell they're taking notes. Those stories get sent to the elected official, and they will use them themselves. Many pieces of legislation come out of the phone calls that we make to our elected officials. They share the knowledge amongst themselves. Geographically, they may talk to the next district over, are you hearing about this in your district? They form coalitions that way. So it's an incredibly powerful piece of information that you're giving them. Next slide, please. We're going to show a quick little video. And Janelle Bynum is a new representative to Congress from Oregon, or District 5 up there. She flipped a Republican seat this year. And this is an interview that she did with Simon Rosenberg, who's a very well-known Democratic strategist who has a Substack and a very active channel. And I think we're gonna, if Betty can start that, you'll hear this conversation. It's pretty short.
New thing we got to do, which is take all this concern and anxiety we have about the future of the country and let our representatives know what's expected of them now. You know, that was the line that we used, that we want to help Republicans know the right thing to do, but also Democrats, right, who perhaps weren't as engaged in all this. And so reflect a little bit about how this is in some ways a different form of the door knocking and the grassroots politics that you do by hearing from all these folks, you know, from back home.
Well, so I also hear from them at the office. Like I said, we get thousands of letters. We get thousands of phone calls, and we log every last one of them. And what is really helpful is when I get to answer those calls. And sometimes people are reading from a script. And I love that, because normally it means that this is that person's first time. And I try to kind of walk them through it, and they're like, oh, I'm really nervous. And I think that the more you do that, even if it's from a script, it is so empowering. So my neighbor around the corner, she's like, what can I do? And I said, well, find an issue you care about, find an organization that is working on that, and they probably have a script. And then I want you to either write a letter or call the office and go through those motions, and then take a picture of yourself doing it, and then share that post on social media. And you would be surprised at how that small act can encourage other people to do it. So public interest and public outrage is how we are changing the polls.
Okay, so it's a very direct message from a representative ourselves. But I hear this everywhere. I hear this from my own representatives. I hear it when I'm on calls nationally. They all want you to call, and they all log every single communication, and they use it in their work. All right, next slide. So what happens to that information after the tallies go? What do they actually do with it? So every day there's a tally that comes into every office, and then those offices all tally them up and get a grand total for the day. And this is how members of Congress and senators track their work, and tracks how they interact with the press, what they say to the press. When they see an increased sense of urgency and they want to make a point, part of that interview is going to be, I have heard from so many people in my such and such amount of people from my district or from my state, you know, their phones are ringing off the hook. So it's used to not only guide legislation, but really guide how they promote that work and how they talk about it on the floor. You'll often, if you listen to floor speeches, they'll talk about a personal story that they heard from one of their constituents. They'll talk about that increased sense of urgency, those increased communications from their constituents, that people are activated, they're upset, they want to see action. A couple of examples here in California that I can give you personally of how this works is Senator Schiff. Adam Schiff is a new senator. He was elected in January. He's pretty well known in California already. He had been, of course, a member of the House for many years. He was inaugurated in January, and he got off to, I think, a slow start. I think that's the best way to put it. And to be fair to him, it's a lot of work to open a new Senate office. You have to open multiple offices in what's already a large state here. But he just really was sort of absent and off the screen. We didn't see from him. We weren't able to get through to his office. The voicemail machines were always full, and people got upset. And we started really inundating him with requests. There were sort of protests outside of his office, but a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails, a lot of letters in. And I would say in the last 3 months, he is probably one of the most visible senators now in the entire country. He has completely turned around. He has the best, and I think the only continuous YouTube channel now. He communicates multiple times a day through his YouTube channel. He's got many, many, many interviews. He's on both mainstream and independent media. So he's responded to our pushing him to do what we wanted, was just to be loud. We don't expect him to be able to change the course of this administration, but we want him to be loud, and he is actually now one of the loudest. Here in California, we have a district, California 22. It's held by a Republican. His name's David Valadao. He has, we've been trying to get him kicked out of office for years. We've never been able to do it. Excuse me. And this district has the largest number or percentage of Medicaid recipients in the country. Almost 70% of the people that live there are on Medicaid. So this district has gotten a huge amount of attention, trying to force him into voting against his party. There's been not only enormous numbers of phone calls, but we've been protesting outside of his office and sending emails. So this huge movement, and he was one of the initial Congress members who said they were going to vote against any bill that cut Medicaid. He obviously backtracked on that. He obviously lied to people, but he did go ahead and vote for it. So now we're doubling down on that. But that pressure to force somebody to be accountable to their voters, to educate the voters in the area, has been very successful there. And now it's gone from a district that we didn't think we could flip now to one that we can. Next slide, please. Couple of things before you call. You want to do your homework. You want to make sure that you're following your elected officials on social media and that you've signed up on their newsletters on their website by checking that there's a box on every person's website where you can get their newsletters. You want to make sure that before you ask them to do something that they haven't already done it. And things move fairly quickly in Washington. So social media is a great way to make sure that that person hasn't already taken that vote or maybe changed their vote. You want to also read the background of an issue, and 5Calls is a great app because for every issue that is a potential call, they will provide you all of the background, including links to multiple sites and resources so that you can make sure that you're very well educated about that. You want to look at the script and read through it. You don't have to follow it completely. I did at the beginning, but you want to make sure you're familiar with it. You want to make your call as quick as possible. You want to know your priorities for calling and contacting, and you have multiple different ways. Your first one is a live conversation, especially if it's a time-sensitive issue. If this is a vote that's going to be held in the next couple of days, you want to make sure that your vote gets on that tally sheet. So having that live conversation is the best way to do that. It's going to get on that tally sheet the fastest. So I always try, if it's a time-sensitive issue, for that live conversation. You will often get a voicemail. That's okay, because again, at the end of the day, it's just that tally that is the most important thing. Sometimes the voicemail machines are full, and that's okay to go ahead and leave an email. Those will also get tallied. Sometimes if I have something that I want to communicate that's not time sensitive, I will just go straight to an email so that I don't take up the staff member's time or a space on a voicemail machine with something that's not time sensitive. Like if I'm thanking them for a vote or thanking them for something that I'm doing, I often use email for that. But it's really up to you. Just keep in mind that at the end of the day, it's that tally number that is the most important thing. So I'm going to turn this over to Betty now, and she's going to go through the actual app itself.
Thanks, Lori. Okay, before I get into the app, I just want to point out a few tips. When you go into the app and you get to your script, you will always begin in the script by identifying yourself and giving your location within their district or state, just so they know you are a constituent. Representatives and senators don't tally opinions from people who are not their constituents. So you do want to identify yourself appropriately. And as Lori alluded to, we are brief in our calls. Both the scripts will be brief, and if you write your own script, it should be brief. And that's because there's not a lot of time to leave a message, and many times you will be leaving a message. But also you want to just be really succinct. You'll address one issue per call, or if you aren't able to, if their voicemail box is full and you don't reach a staffer, you may want to follow up with an email. You don't have to. You could call on that issue tomorrow and hope they've cleared the voicemail box. But anyway, only address one issue at a time. The one exception is if you do get a staffer, you could say at the very end, hey, could I register my opinion on one other issue quickly? And they may say, sure, go ahead. And you can, raise one more issue and tell how you feel about that. But otherwise, keep it brief. You want your message to fit within the recording, and you want an email to be short so that they do read it all. And again, as I said, if you write your own script, you do want to keep it short. And Lori had mentioned including specific personal impacts. It just gets their attention. And as Lori said, they may pass that anecdote on to others or put it into a newsletter to constituents to just really gain buy-in either from other representatives or from constituents. We all have very strong feelings / outrage about what's going on right now. But in these calls, we need to be professional and polite. It's just not the time and place for heavy vitriol. And as Lori also mentioned, do express gratitude when appropriate to your representative or to your senators. You can imagine their work environment these days can be pretty nasty. And if they're doing something that you really respect, it's great to point that out. So here's what the app is going to look like. It's called 5 Calls. Really, they only did that. We called them and they said, you know what? It just sounded good to say spend 5 minutes, make 5 calls. It's really 3 calls. It's your representative and your 2 senators. So let's take a look at I'm going to change this. When you come in, this is what you're going to see. Right over here is where you're going to enter either your address or your zip code. And you do that so that they populate your representative and your 2 senators. On the right, this is for you to get additional information. You can learn more about why calling works. You could get t-shirts, merchandise, or they have a guide to getting started. If after today you've got more questions, that might be a helpful way to add some understanding to why you're making these calls or how to make these calls. Anyway, on the left, you'll see issues. I think it's best go down here. It says see all 65 issues. We held one of these a month ago. There were only 42 issues. You can imagine the number of issues we're calling about is only going to increase as we get deeper into this administration. But click see all 65 issues. The great thing if you do that is that you're going to have the issues broken into subject matters. So you can scroll and just see what issue you might be most you might feel the most strongly about right away. And it goes all the way down to workers' rights. So they're just alphabetical. And I'm going to, when I'm in a breakout room today, I'm going to call about the Veterans Administration. So I'm just going to show you, if that was your decision, you'd come over here, you click on the issue that you're interested in calling about, save the Veterans Health Administration. These first 3 paragraphs are the background. It's succinct, but if you want more information, click on all these links, you'll get even more information. This just provides the foundation for your call. It's not the script. It's just background so that you feel well educated about the reason for your call. You can use that as information to include if you want to write your own script, or you can just use it as your own underpinnings. Then, because I entered my zip code, I've got my representative and my 2 senators. Wherever you're calling from, when you enter your zip code, there will be different names here. The large number for each of them will be the DC phone number for their DC office, but very likely all of them will have other offices. Our representative has 5 other offices, so he's got a pretty large district. So anyway, I'm going to be calling when I'm in the breakout room. I will call that DC number. Here's the script. It's very brief. Hi, my name is Betty Von Glahn, and I'm a constituent from San Rafael. So you're giving your name, you're giving your location. The one bone I have to pick with the scripts is this word demand. We happen to have a fantastic representative, and that just feels a little aggressive to me with him. So I'm going to say I'm calling to ask Representative Huffman to oppose House Resolution 740. And then after this first sentence about the veterans, I'm just going to add a very brief sentence about my personal thing. And I'm just going to say, both of my parents were Army veterans, and I think this legislation is shameful. The legislation will be detrimental to the health care of over 9 million US military veterans, and it will ultimately divert public funds to the private sector. So I didn't launch into a long story. It's not going to make it if I am on an answering machine. So keeping it short, but personalizing it. Then, if you weren't able to reach a staffer and the voicemail was full, you will click unavailable. If you leave a voicemail, you'll click voicemail. If you reach a staffer, you're going to click contact. And then skip is, let's say I called Jared Huffman yesterday on this issue, but I didn't get to Adam Schiff or Alex Padilla. At the end of this, if I say skip, I don't have to call Jared Huffman. I can go to Adam Schiff. And if I only want to call Padilla, here's Padilla's number. So it's very intuitive after you've done it maybe one time. I mean, I think it's intuitive right off the bat. The only other thing I want to say about ease of use, I prefer to pull this app up on my laptop so that I've got my script right here. And then I dial this number and I go through this. I still click these buttons here. I don't click them on my phone. The reason is that if you're using your phone, once that phone is dialing, if you can picture it, you're looking at the keypad on your phone. But as soon as they answer, you want to see the script. And it's possible to do this. And it's not hard, but you will have to tap the home button on your phone and then click on the browser. For me, that would be Chrome. And then it'll bring up the script and I can talk to the person. I prefer, if you've got access to a desktop or a laptop or a tablet, whatever, I prefer to have my script here and hold my phone in my hand so that I'm not using the phone for everything. It's just a tiny bit more cumbersome, but just if you're doing it, just click your home button and go to your browser, go to Chrome or Safari or whatever it is. Okay, so I did want to tell you about a couple of times where the appearance of the app is going to be a little bit different. So if you were going to go into voting rights and you want to, let's see if this is one. Let me just check. Yeah. When you go into voting rights, election laws are at the state level. So if you click on that, I'm not seeing my representative and two senators. I'm seeing my governor and my attorney general. So there's an instance where different names will appear. If you were going to go to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act of Trump's, you're not going to see your representative because it passed the House last week. So we're not calling Jared Huffman, we're only calling our senators. So those are the only two exceptions where you shouldn't, well, the only two I'm aware of, where you shouldn't see your representative and your two senators. Okay, so I think there's only one more thing I wanted to show you, and that is that there are, unrelated to these calls, there are a few actions that we wanted to tell you about because it's ways that you can influence Republican reps if you're in a blue area. And there are some phone banks that are happening right now where where the phone bank has been organized for the phone bankers to call people in other states who live in or who have a Republican senator or who may have a Republican representative. And you're urging those people, the voters, to call their senators, because as I said, the senator isn't going to listen to you if you're not from their state. So it's pretty unusual. In fact, I don't know. I think Lori was saying earlier, she doesn't think there's been another instance where the California Democratic Party has organized phone banks to call outside of California. But in order to affect the Senate vote on the reconciliation bill and in order to preserve Medicaid for people, they have organized a phone bank where we're going to ask voters in Alaska, North Carolina, and Missouri to call their senators and urge them to vote against that bill. In Missouri, Josh Hawley has vowed he will not vote to cut Medicaid. He's been very vocal about it. So this phone bank could really influence him. If a lot of his constituents call him, it is likely, since his original intent is not to support cuts to Medicaid, if he hears from a lot of people, he may double down and vote against Trump. North Carolina, the calls are to Senator Tillis, and in Alaska, they're to Senator Sullivan. Indivisible National is also hosting calls about the reconciliation bill, and they are calling voters about calling their senators. And then Activate America has organized a phone bank for tariffs. If you're interested in these, just Google, and all you'd have to do is Google Mobilize California Democratic Party, and their phone banks should come up. Mobilize Indivisible, Mobilize Activate America, and the phone banks should come up. Anyway, it's just another way for those of us who live in blue districts to help move the needle on various legislation, but most importantly, this reconciliation bill of Trump's.